All right, everyone, welcome to Beneath the Helmet. This is season 4, episode 106, and today is a bonus episode. Today's bonus episode is celebrating the launch of the hit movie Code 3, which is out on most platforms as well as Netflix now. I'm your host, Arjuna George, former fire chief turned podcaster, author, and coach to the fire service. I'm joined with a former firefighter EMT, turned author, podcaster, and now the writer of this hit movie. And I got to say, one of my favorite movies so far, Code 3. Honestly, it really resonated with me. Uh, Being a first responder, Code 3 was probably the most realistic show I've seen in the movie realm. Together today, we get to talk to Patrick Pianezza, and we're going to chat all about Code 3 and kind of the birth of Code 3, the movie, and some of the nuggets around the first spawner world. So welcome to the show, Patrick.
It's time to ignite your soul and unlock your full potential. Join us on Beneath the Helmet, the podcast exploring firefighters' health and wellness. Hosted by retired fire chief Arjuna George, our podcast is the perfect place to start your journey towards becoming the best version of yourself. So come on, let's join the conversation and find out what sets your soul on fire.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Fantastic. So tell our listener a little bit about who Patrick is, kind of your background, just a little quick snapshot of who you are, what brought you from being a firefighter into Hollywood and writing scripts for movies.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to do that. So I feel, especially for our audience, I need to make my disclaimer. I am a dual citizen of the United States and Canada, so I've got both passports there. But yeah, but I grew up in rural Illinois. So I grew up in a little farming town called Sherman, and my dad was a baker, small business owner, and my mom was a physical therapist. And so what I tell everybody is that I'm what happens when a small business owner and a physical therapist have a baby. You get somebody who gets their master's in healthcare administration. So like I said, I grew up in Illinois. I got my EMT, my paramedic. So for those of you, the Canadians out there, back when I was doing it, you had to go through the 3 steps. You had to go EMT, intermediate, and then paramedic. And was working in a hospital because I was too young to drive the ambulance. Where I lived, you had to be 21 in order to drive, and so I couldn't work there. So I worked in the emergency room and got a lot of experience working at a level 1 burn center and trauma center in Springfield. And then from there, moved to the University of South Carolina in Columbia, South Carolina, and did my bachelor's and my master's. My bachelor's is in public relations. My master's is in healthcare administration. And was working the whole time when I was in college. I was working 911 on the ambulance there. And so lots of 911 experience. I had the textbooks on the dashboard, was doing homework, between calls kind of thing. So I was either doing paperwork or I was doing homework, one of those two lovely hobbies. And then from there, after grad school, I had the opportunity to go work at Johns Hopkins hospital in Baltimore. So I was there. I was doing my postgraduate externship in human resources, and then on the weekend was on their critical care transport team. So I was doing, ICU level transfers at arguably one of the best hospitals in the country, and then started working in California. I got my first job out of grad school where I ran my first department and kind of parted ways with my EMT past. I worked in California for like 10 minutes. I worked on a CCT truck for, I think, like a month and a half. And then just kind of, I faded into the administrative realms of my life and did that for about the last decade. To answer your question about how did I get to Hollywood, when I was in undergrad, I had to take a creative writing class, and I had no interest in creative writing. I did not go to school for creative writing. I mean, PR is all writing centric, but it wasn't really. I didn't have any dreams of being in the movie business. Like, I enjoyed being able. I wanted to be a PIO until I found out about my grad school. Like, that's what I wanted to do deeply, was to go be a public information officer. So I wrote this short story as part of that class assignment about EMS. I had this beatnik professor who kind of put his feet up on the desk, and he said, "Well, if you want to tell a compelling story, write what you know." And I had just come off this hellaciously long 14-hour shift that was supposed to be 12, where I was still, 3 PCRs deep. And I just remember being in class going, "I'll tell you a story you'll never forget." So I went home and just wrote this. It was like I was possessed. I wrote this 36-page short story all about EMS and burnout and, my frustrations. And I sent it to him and I sent it to my parents and my brother as kind of a joke. I said, "You guys always want to know what my job is like. Here you go." And that was it. This entire film was a homework assignment. Flash forward to about 10 years later, give or take, and I'm visiting my brother who is in Los Angeles and actively working in the film industry, in visual effects. And I had about a month, but before my new job was to start, and so he, as any little brother will tell you, would be like, "I can't stand to see you happy, so get to work," and got me the program to write, got to write movie scripts. And he said, "You got that short story, turn that into a movie." And so I did. Again, not knowing anything. The first draft was absolute garbage. I want to be 100% clear. Like, it was just terrible, but it was an attempt, right? I just put it on paper. And then ultimately, my brother took it to Chris Leone, who's the director of the film. Chris and my brother were co-workers. My brother's a producer on the film. So if you see the word pizza, Pianezza, that's my brother. And then Chris is the director. And what I tell everybody is you have to be good, and then you just have to get lucky. And the getting lucky part was my brother and Chris were coworkers. And so my brother kind of saddled up to Chris and kept pestering him and kept pestering him to read the script, because the first time he showed up, he said, "Hey, Chris, you want to read a script?" He goes, "Absolutely not," which is the right answer in this industry. And then ultimately, Chris read it. Chris liked it enough to say, "This is really interesting. I want to meet him." Chris and I had our first kind of lunch meeting that went really well. And he goes, "Tell me something as an outsider that would completely blow my mind." And I just started laughing. And I just said, "Well, Chris, I know what brains smell like." And he was like, "Oh my God, we're putting that in the movie." Uh, and we, uh, we became very fast friends and worked together on the script for about 10 years, 10 or 12 years. And nobody got paid. This was kind of a passion project. We were both working, all three of us were working regular jobs. But, we would work on it and email each other. And then I would drive down to LA to go hang out with everybody. And over those years, the story obviously matured and got much better and changed. And then ultimately, once Chris and I got the script to a place where we really liked it, because Chris is a known quantity in the area, he has representatives who started shopping it around to the different studios. And I get this question a lot of, how did you pick Rainn Wilson? Well, it's actually the inverse. The script landed in Rainn Wilson's lap. Rainn loved it. He picked us. And then because of Rainn, we got the studio and financing and the rest of the way. So it was the most bizarre path to get here, but I wouldn't have done it any other way.
And I gotta say, Rain in this film is the perfect person for the role. He's
Absolutely.
funny, but also can be serious at the same time. Yeah, he's perfect actor for that position. So when you were first kind of writing this, what was your intention? Was it for entertainment? Was it for awareness about mental health, about burnout? What was kind of your personal goal of writing the story?
Well, again, if you flash back to college age Patrick, it was really just screaming into the void about my frustrations about the job and the pay and the stuff that we are subjected to as part of our regular job. And so it was really born out of really frustration. Like, I have the original, I still have it. It's over here somewhere. The original short story, and I reread it right before the movie came out, and I was just like, "Oh my God, like this is not only is it very different than what the movie was, but it was like, yeah, I should have probably gotten help earlier." Um, but it was really, it wasn't meant to be really entertaining. I wrote it because part of the class project was you had to read it to the class. So there was a certain entertainment aspect of it. But for me, I wrote it to just say, like, this is what my experience in EMS is like. And so, number one, to kind of to raise awareness in that, class of 20, students, um, and to be moderately entertaining. And that was it. It was legitimately a homework assignment. It was not, I did not have dreams of it becoming a movie. It was It was just a homework assignment, but it was incredibly cathartic to write something like that at that time in my life, just to be like, just to get it out, kind of. I think it really helped as part of my journey, at least.
So you were experiencing burnout, mental
Oh
health
yeah.
challenges with yourself going through all this because you had a very full plate when you were writing this as well, right? So, what did you learn about yourself, kind of writing this about how you got to take care of yourself in this industry of the first responder world?
Well, I mean, that's a great question, and I think part of that is looking back. I didn't realize it at the time how burnt out I was, because to me that was my day to day. And I want to be abundantly clear to anybody who's listening. I was incredibly fortunate. I never struggled with alcoholism or suicidality. That doesn't make me better, stronger, tougher than anybody who has those issues, but I was just incredibly fortunate. I was just angry and frustrated and was, maybe not the nicest guy to be around, but thankfully it never perceived beyond that. And I think part of that was because of what college life afforded me, as far as the ability to have different outlets and interact with other people. But looking back on that process, for me, it was, I know for a fact I didn't realize how far burnt out I was at the time. Um, and so what I realized from that was, like, what I tell new people getting into the industry now is, make sure you take care of yourself, make sure you take time for yourself, because I was always born of the mindset of, work harder, work stronger, be on your A game, things like that. And while all of those things are crucially important, you will never ever hear me say don't be clinically, good at your job. But I do tell everybody, like, you have to make time for yourself, because if not, this job I loved, and I've said this before, I love EMS. I love everything about EMS. I love this job. In fact, I still am a paramedic, though I don't really take care of patients anymore. Um, but that this job could take everything away from you too. And so I think it's one of those things where we are helpers and givers by nature, but we also have to make sure that that it's not taking everything from us as well.
So this film is based over a 24-hour period, which I think is also kind of an original concept idea as well, right? A 24-hour shift.
Yeah.
Those calls that happen in that 24 hours, all of them real? All of them make believe? All of them close to being real? What would you
So
say about that?
they are all based in reality. None of the stories, and even the stuff that hit the cutting room floor, all of this stuff is based on my experiences. Now, the one thing I do tell everyone is that one scene is not one person. This is essentially 12 years of experience boiled down into, like, the craziest 12-hour shifts. So, like, the Mr. President, for example, is not one person, but he is an amalgamation of multiple calls that we have treated in that. Just like Dr. Serrano, the thing I hear the most about is, like, oh, our ER docs, no one's that bad. It's like, no, he's a cartoon. Like, he is. We needed somebody to stand up to Rain. Um, but we've all met that doctor that you're just like, oh Jesus, I don't want to talk to this guy or girl.
Yeah.
So yeah, they are all based 100% in reality, and they all come from an authentic place, which I think lends credibility to the film. One of the things that I see a lot online is, you know, when I read comments or when people randomly reach out to me, it's like, this felt visceral, it felt real, I felt seen. And I think we worked really hard. I don't think, I know we worked really hard to tell an authentic story. And so even in pre-production, or even when we were getting ready to film, I was there every day, and so I was able to backstop some of the more zaniness that people are like, well, what if this happened? And it's like, because no. And that only happens because of the relationship I had with the director, with Chris. Like, there's no rule, there's no law that says you have to do exactly what the writer says at all. So I was incredibly lucky to have that strong, number one, friendship with Chris, and number two, the partnership that he trusted me when it came to things like that, to be able to hold my hand up and just say no. Uh, but understanding that I was walking a razor's edge, because he's the director. I'm just the guy.
Yeah, honestly, like I said in the beginning, is this felt the most real show that I've watched in all the first responder movies that you know of, right? That are all the big names that are out there, you know the ones. And I actually got goosebumps watching this show because I was like, I could feel that emotional reaction of some of the calls that were on. I was like, wow, this is something that maybe not exactly the same, but I felt something very, very similar on a call that I can remember going back to, right? And I can remember having goosebumps on my arms. I was like, oof, this is actually bringing up something, but also, uh, like you said, being heard and being seen. Like, oh, this is actually a show that's actually showing the realities of being a first responder, right? So I just want to
And
kind of reiterate that because I think that's important for the listener to hear that this is not just another, blockbuster, explosions and all the fancy stuff. It's a true life story of a first responder, right?
yeah, I appreciate that. And one of the things is, especially for first responders that are going to go see the film, even if you've never run that call, what we wanted to hit were the emotional beats of what those calls can bring up. So it's like I'm glad. I hope it wasn't painful, but like I'm glad that it resonated so well with the goosebumps because part of that is to get anybody who's been in this job for more than 5 years, I think, has a distinctly different viewing experience than people who don't or don't have that experience. Like that kind of like that spine tingling sixth sense going, oh, wait a second, like something, I think I know what's coming. And it's kind of like, yeah, because we also don't, we also never go cartoony. One of the things that I was very, again, incredibly fortunate that Chris was such a great partner on this because, again, he's the director, um, was that we aligned very early on a couple of key concepts. Number one is that we would never make fun of the patient. We can make fun of everything else. We can make fun of the setups, the what's going on, we can make fun of everything, but we'll never make fun of the person who's in crisis. Um, we also agreed that there would be no love story. We had no interest in that, and that we wouldn't do like this cartoony hero worshiping, nonsense. So, again, those were the things that one of the reasons I really loved partnering with Chris, and the fact that he was true to that. And I think that's the reason we're getting all of this love out there, even though it wasn't a huge blockbuster.
I think it's amazing, and I think everyone listening right now should definitely check this movie out for sure. Well, one of my favorite, not I had so many favorite scenes, but one of my favorite one was when they're in the diner having lunch, and Rain's trying to have lunch, and the public keeps asking him questions. And one of the biggest questions is, "What's the worst thing you've ever seen?" And I don't know how many times I've heard that question myself, right? So that once again, that was like, oh, this is real life. We're witnessing real life right here. Yeah,
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 because again,
perfect.
we wanted the thing is like I looked up the statistics. I think there's something like a 500,000 paramedics, at least in the United States. I don't know how many are in Canada, but so I wanted that population to feel seen, but I also wanted the other 7 billion people to enjoy it as well. So it's kind of like this. We're threading this line of like this can't be a movie for just 500,000 people.
Saying that, who is the audience that's seeing this? Is it a total mix, or is it mostly first responders that you're seeing?
It is a total mix. I mean, I don't have specific data on all the demographics, but I would argue that the people that are making the most comments and the people that are reaching out tend to be first responders or significant others of people in that realm. To me, the comments that I really love are when people say things like, "I now have a conversation. I now understand, or I have an idea, or I understand why my husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever." Is quiet sometimes when they come home. Or, there's been some medics that say, now I feel like I've got a starting point. I'll have my family watch this movie before I tell them about, my job. Because I think part of that is also this mechanism that we have, speaking incredibly generally about the field of like, I don't want to burden you with the garbage that I had to deal with, right? So it's like, how was your day? It was fine. No, it was pretty terrible actually. We had to see some pretty nasty, gnarly stuff out there. Um, but I also think that that silence isn't healthy either. But there's a fine line of like I don't want to trauma dump on you and then cause you to have a problem. So I certainly don't have the answer, but I'm glad that this film is a bridge to helping at least some people have more in-depth conversations about what this job is and what it's like to work in this field.
Rain is the person that keeps popping on my mind, but all the cast, was there anything that they kind of brought to you or brought to the director of like, wow, I did not think this was a reality in the first spawner world? Any nuggets or stories that you remember about like, wow, this is surprising that this happens to paramedics, first responders, firefighters.
I mean, the pay certainly was
Mm.
one of the biggest things that caught everybody's eye, and we come out swinging. Like I don't claim to have the answers, but we certainly didn't shy away from here are some of the issues that we're aware of. So pay was very eye-opening to people that had no foray into this world. And then the that Mr. President scene, that whole thing. Like obviously Chris and I wrote it. We knew what we wanted to convey in that scene. But Raf Castillo is the actor who plays Mr. President, who's phenomenal. And Rel, they read the script, they knew what they were doing, and then they came to Chris and said, "Hey, like we know what's on the page here, but we want to do it our way." And Chris was absolutely like, "Go, go forth and do." And what do two white Italian kids know about the lived black experience? Like nothing, right? So it's kind of like, yeah, we knew what we wanted to do. Um, but almost all of that scene, once they get down the stairs, so we have the joke about the Secret Service and everything else, but from as soon as the first cop shows up on, for the most part, it's improv by those two incredible actors, and
Wow.
they did it on their first take. They just rolled with it, and being on scene, being 10 feet away from this whole thing that's going on was incredible. And so what they brought to that film was their experience and us saying like, yeah, we trust you guys you're very talented. And I think that comes across as real. Like there's no way that I couldn't have written that. There's no way. Um, but there's that their humanity comes through a lot. I think the Vincente scene. So I'm assuming I'm going to spoil this, so I'm sorry, but the scene where Vincente at the hospital, when the nurse comes out and tells them, there's this moment where Rel just goes, "That sucks." And we wanted that in there because Chris had asked me multiple times, what's some of the really terrible things? I go, anything dealing with kids is bad. He goes, well, what happens when somebody dies? I go, it sucks. And so we literally put that in there. And the way that he delivers that line, I think is very honest. And to me, it's a lot of little things that got done very, very well, which is why I'm really proud of it. But you couldn't have asked for a more dedicated cast and crew. So I mean, we obviously trained them. We had some fun with them. We took them on a ride along. They got to see real 911 stuff. We taught them. We all got them CPR certified. They all had to do CPR right. That was my hill to die on.
Love it.
That CPR was going to be done well. And if you watch the movie, there you'll see that CPR is done correctly.
Nice. Well done.
But yeah, we taught them how to innovate. We taught them obviously how to immobilize. We taught them all the things. And like obviously they didn't memorize all that. I mean, I was on set, so right before we would do anything medically intense, I was like, all right, guys, remember here's where your hands go and things like that. And one of the funniest bits about that was the guy that Mike is named after, the character Mike, is one of my old partners, one of the guys I went to paramedic school with. And I invited him, and he came to set one day. And it was the same day that we were filming the scene with Vincente, the baseball kid. And so we're getting ready to set up and we're prepping. And so I grab the real Mike and I say, hey Mike, come on, let's run this call so that way we can present it to the actors so they know what they have to go do. So we go over there and him and I fall right back into our old rhythms, right? It's like, all right, I'm gonna grab this, I'm doing this. What are you doing? Good, great, great. You know, and we do it about 2 or 3 times. We feel real good about it. We take all the toys over to where the actors are hanging out. We go, okay, guys, watch. Here's what we're doing. Him and I just boom, 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 boom. And it's the funnier thing is just like in real life, like I can't speak for you guys, but there's not usually a lot of conversation going on. Like if I trust my partner, you're in sync, right? You're just doing the things. And so we get done and we're like, ta-da, and they're like, absolutely not, no. And we're like, well, what part hang you up on it? And they're like, everything. So I started going in. I was like, okay, well, I'm an educator by nature, so I'm like, okay, well, here's what's going on step by step and why we're doing it. You're going to reassess lung sounds. You're going to do this. You're looking at the monitor to check that. You're going to ask this question. And they were, I want to say it was Rain, maybe it was Rel. I can't remember. One of them goes, listen, that's great that you know that stuff. We don't care. All we need to know is where do we put our hands? They were like, treat this like a dance, and that was a huge light bulb for me. It's like, oh yeah, they're not going to go be paramedics like tomorrow. So it's like the scene in the ambulance that is shot that, we pick the kid up, we put him in the ambulance. What cracks me up about when I watch this movie is Amy's furiously writing on a notepad, right, to take vitals and things. And if the camera could see, if you could see what's on her notepad, it's put left hand here, put right hand here.
Oh, that's awesome. Love the behind the scene. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there must be some great bloopers, I imagine too, eh? Some
There was
outtakes
some
that
fun. Yeah.
oh, I bet. Yeah.
The whole subway scene, they did that maybe a half a dozen times, and they were incredible. I know that I personally ruined one of the takes because I couldn't hold in my laughter. So I was like, I just started laughing and they had to call cut and I felt bad, but yeah, it's incredible.
Did you have the opportunity to be there on set the whole time? Like,
Mhm.
did you
Yeah.
witness every scene? Oh,
Every
beautiful.
day. I was
Nice.
there for I was there for pre-production and every day that we were filming, and then a little bit in post just to kind of point out, like sound effects or things like that.
So you mentioned that the kid was one of the most challenging. Would you say that was the most challenging kind of chapter of this story that you shared with the world? Is that emotion dealing with kids, or is there something deeper or more impactful to you?
To me, I mean, so yes, anytime you deal with children, it's terrible. Um, I mean, if you have a good outcome, it's not, obviously. I'm talking about like the worst case scenarios. But for me, it's about the that car accident at the very end, the very last scene. For me, is one of those things that immediately brings me back to exactly what that call is based off of, and it's horrific because that scene is actually very similar to one call in particular. There's still some stuff mixed in, but um, again, for when I watch it, that's the scene to me. I'm like, oof, like every time I watch it, because we did have, a pediatric and a mom that was crashing and all the things, but um, working um, through that scene, watching that scene at 300 times at this point, has lessened the blow. But it's still, to me, not that you know the death of a child is better or worse, but when you're asking about things that call back to my mind, that scene to me always hits me.
Yep, I can definitely see that. How many times have we seen a car crash that's involved, multiple people, especially a kid, right?
Yeah.
So there's an underlying theme in this. Well, to me, I went through burnout myself as a fire chief, left the fire service due to burnout. So I think this movie hit me extra hard, right? Because to me, the underlying theme is burnout from first responder world, and hitting. I don't know how many years the character Rain had in there, but it was a long time, I
I think
believe,
he
right?
had like 16. I think is
Oh,
what was in
16.
this,
Okay, it was
16
okay.
or 9, 16 or 18, one of those two. I
So
should know my own script.
a long time in the service, right? So
Yeah.
I know burnout is pretty common now, and a lot of people are talking about it. What's your views on burnout in the first responder world and how we could maybe do a better job? Anything that comes to mind in your world?
Yeah, I think we need to get away from the glamorization of burnout. And what I mean by that is, like, there's a lot of talking heads, and I'll throw myself in there too. I'm not immune from this, but there's a lot of people talking about burnout, and I think that's important. And I think we've done a good enough job talking about the awareness of burnout. My question is, like, what are we doing about it? Because I mean, like you, I went through significant burnout. I'm very glad that I left the service when I did. I was probably 2 years too late to that party. I should have left a little earlier, but um, I think that when we talk about burnout, I think that's great, and I think that there are resources, way more resources than when I went through. I'm imagining the same with you, um, but don't let me put words in your mouth. However, even the resources that are currently available, I think need to be validated. And what I mean by that is I gave the keynote at the Colorado EMS symposium late last year. And what I tell people, what I hear a lot is, especially from employers who, to be clear, it's their best intentions. Like, I want to be abundantly clear. There's nowhere that I have found that I truly believe is like they wake up and they're like, how can I make people's lives a living hell? Like, I think these people have the best intentions, with the asterisks of, one of the things I hear a lot about is like, oh, we have a robust employee assistance program, right? Like, call 1-800 I need help and you'll get help. My follow-up question to that is, have you personally validated that? Because I tried using an EAP system program once, and here's what happened to me. I called 1-800, hey, And I was just like, hey, I'm burnout. I know I'm burnout. I was actually using the words burnout, which I think back then was like unheard of. And they were like, okay, cool. Here's a list of people that you could call, and basically good luck. And first guy's dead, second guy's out of state, third guy's not taking new clients, fourth guy is like, yeah, I've got an appointment 6 weeks from Tuesday. Um, and that's where I think the system fails us yet again. It's not because when you call, that 1-800 EAP number, you're most likely going to talk to a coach or an operator. None of them are clinically appropriate for the stuff that we're dealing with. And in my experience, I won't speak for all of them, the clinicians that they're going to give you are just kind of like psychiatrists or psychologists in your area. Now, there is no special certification for first responder burnout, but I think that that might be a viable avenue to specialize in because, like my paramedic instructor used to say, to work in this field, you just got to be a quarter turn off. And I think there's a part of that that's true. There has to be someone who resonates. And uh, I've said this before too, like the first two, two or three mental health people that I spoke to were not a good fit. Like I had to keep finding the one that worked for me. So that's the other problem is like how easily is it to access those resources? How well are those resources funded? And at least in the US, or at least in the programs that I've seen, even if you get somebody, even if it's the right person, and even you get an appointment in a reasonable amount of time, again, most of the programs that I've seen, you get 6 free services, 6 free messages. I don't know about you, but if you've dealt with something absolutely horrific, 6 is probably not enough. And then it falls onto your insurance or yourself. So um, when it comes to talking about burnout, I think we need to be way more proactive. We need to start investing in programs and systems that we know will assist. And again, this is one of those situations where I'm happy to point and be like, hey, I think there's an issue here or a crack. Do I have all the answers? No, but there are what I think are common sense solutions. So having access and teams available for critical incident stress debriefing on dispatch, right? If you get dispatched to a pediatric arrest that's, confirmed down CPR in progress, like CISD should be dispatched to wherever your station is, so that way they meet you back there when you're done. Why? Because even if that's not the call that sends you over the edge, being able to talk about it is important. Um, Having an actual EAP system that's worth a darn, I think, is a simple thing that we can all get better at doing. I mean, obviously, the foundational issues of pay disparities, especially in the U.S., is a significant factor, and you can't have that conversation without talking about reimbursements. And your audience doesn't care about that, but yes, we know it's an issue. How we fix it is complicated. Um, but then it's also like, do we look at the workload for the providers that are on the trucks? Is moving to a 24/72 schedule better than a 24/48 or a 10-hour shift or 12-hour, whatever that looks like? Again, I don't have the depth of knowledge in that specificity to be able to tell you, yeah, if you do X, everything gets better. But I do think that there are things that we need to look at as a profession to say, great, we know burnout exists. What are we doing about it? I see far too many people talking about it and not enough people doing things about it. And to me, that's still my frustration when I look into the rearview mirror, even when I look at what organizations are currently doing.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on the whole EAP thing because I think there's a lot of benefit from them, but on the flip side, I've also dealt with them as well. And you're talking with somebody maybe not even in the same province or state as you, and a very minimal impact I've received from those avenues, right? I think it's more of a checkbox.
Yeah, try
Yes,
meditation and
yes,
yoga, right? Like,
yeah,
thanks,
yeah,
I've heard that before. That's
yeah, yeah. So it's a challenge for sure, for sure. What kind of conversations do you hope this movie sparks in the first responder world? Is there anything that you're hoping sparks the conversation somewhere around the world around
I
burnout,
mean,
mental health,
I hope
paramedics?
that it allows people to see that they're not alone, because I have heard a lot of people that are watching this, and it's the same stuff, like I feel seen. I hope that when people say that, what they're saying is like, oh man, like I am burnt out. Like that whole scene, that's we did it kind of funny but kind of serious, was when he's going, I'm burnt out, I'm burning out, I'm burned out, I know I'm burned out. And then the fuck everything scene was arguably the most cathartic thing in the world for me to write, because it's just like everybody has that moment where you're just like, I hate everybody. Uh, And while we can chuckle at that, I think what I'm hoping is that that leads to deeper conversations with qualified people. And I've said this before, like friends, family, coworkers are fantastic, but you need to get help with somebody who has a specialty in this. Um, like I said before, I don't have all the answers, but I do have three rules that I think are insanely important that anybody in all first responder, to police, fire, EMS, all of it, dispatch too. Um, Number one, you have to have friends that are not in this world because they're a great mirror and be able to tell you like, oh, you're looking crispy, man. You know, go make friends with a school teacher. Like you got to make friends with people that are outside of your the bubble of public safety.
So
Number two,
important.
yeah. Number two, you got to talk to somebody with a degree, like a psychiatrist, a psychologist. And this is, I'm not saying that all of us are broken and everybody needs therapy all the time. However, it is important to have that resource available when you need it. You can just make that call. It's not, you don't have to go through the scheduling, the EAP, all of that nonsense. Like, I'm going to call Dr. Jones because I know that he or she is good. And then the third one is take your vacation. You need to take time away from this job because there is, I truly believe that this is the one of the most honorable positions in the world. I don't think that there is a job like it anywhere else, but I also think like sometimes there's a lot asked of us and we don't spend enough time filling our own tank. And so what I tell people is don't let your employer tell you, oh, they're going to be short, whatever. Like take the time that you need to decompress and get away from this job. And that's a great time to go make friends with, engineers and whatever. But you need to step away from this job because if not, it has the potential to consume you.
Yep. Well, all three of those were elements of my burnout for sure, right? I had zero friends outside of the fire service. Everyone I talked to was in the fire service. Took vacation to do work.
Yeah. I mean, I tell people all the time, like I was a college student, right? So there's
Mhm.
almost 30,000 other students surrounding me. And who are my best friends? Cops, firefighters, and medics.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
that is not like the perfect picture of like undergrads everywhere and grad students. And it's like, who are my buddies? Yeah. And the other thing too is I work night shift, which is also insanely isolating because, you know, very few of your friends are up at 3 o'clock in the morning and want to play video games, you know.
You see yourself ever going back to the first responder world? Is that on the
Possibly, like
yeah?
like I said, I do still have my credential.
Mhm.
I don't have a burning desire to jump back on the truck, and frankly, I would not feel comfortable being the paramedic in charge or the crew chief um, without significant coaching. Just because it's one thing to have a piece of plastic that says you know what you're doing. It's another thing to be like day in and day out. Like I don't want to be I have confidence in my skill set given my experience, but I certainly don't want to be like, here are the keys to the truck, go save the world. Like, what, but give me at least a week or two of on the job retraining kind of stuff. Um, but I do feel like the basics of that job, specifically as it pertains to the ability to make a rapport, make a connection with those patients, have meaningful dialogue with them so you can understand what's going on in their life and be empathetic and compassionate to whatever their situation is. I mean, I feel like I still have that, but do I foresee myself working 911 again? Um, Maybe. I would never say no, but it's certainly not the primary driver of where my professional career is headed right now.
What do you think is the difference between dispatch and being like on the front lines in
I think they're
regards to
both.
mental health challenges, burnout, anything like that?
I think there's significant differences, and the people that are on the other end of the phone are heroes. Like the good and the bad of being on the truck is that you get to see the responses of whatever treatment you're giving or um, whatever it is that you're doing, right? Like you could be having the world's worst day ever, which is probably why you call 911. And we'll show up and we get to be firsthand observers of that. And that's sometimes horrifically tragic and sometimes it's heroic. And most of the times it's just kind of banal. It's kind of like, cool, I'm here, let's help you out. And then I get to take you from your crisis to usually the hospital. And hopefully you improve in that time or, uh, something has happened where there's nothing that I can do that's going to change whatever's going on. But at least for me, I have the the idea of what happened or what I did, and I can rest assured that I did my best to help you whatever way you can. I have never worked in dispatch. I am not a dispatcher. I've never done that. I can only imagine that that job, you hear the worst all the time and you don't get to see, you know, did they get better? Did they get worse? Did they make it? Did they not? And the other thing too is you'll have to forgive me about my experience. I don't know enough about Canadian dispatch, but in the US, most of the time the dispatchers are dispatching all three services, four services, right? Um, and so like they'll jump from, you know, my boyfriend has a gun outside the door to grandpa fell in the bathtub, right? So like dispatchers in our world, they're handling all three services usually. Um, and I can't imagine what that mentally is like because, the guy with the gun outside, and then, you're dispatching police and everybody else to go take care of that. But like, I don't know how you flush that because you have no idea probably what's the resolution of that. And so I think dispatchers they are an amazing asset. And I am not qualified nor have any insight into what they go through or how they take care of themselves. Because at least for me, I could be like, I tried my hardest, like I did my thing. Now, whether it worked or not, sometimes isn't up to me. So I think there's significant differences there, and I think they do great work. I would hesitate to even try to say how to help them because that's not a world I'm familiar with.
Agree 100%. It's like I struggle with going to a call and handing it off to the hospital and not knowing what happens to the patient there. I struggle with that. I couldn't, let alone not having even the visual of that, just being strictly behind a telephone, how much that stress must just sit in your body and not get processed between there and the next call you have, right? So, yeah, yep. Heroes, like you said, heroes. So, if you could sit down with every person who watches this film, what do you hope they take away from the movie? Like if you could sit down with every first responder who watches it and hear what they're taking away, what are you hoping that they'll say?
Well, I think so. I really like that question. I would split it into two camps, like the people who do the job and the people who don't do the job. I think for
Awesome.
the people that do the job, I would just ask them like my biggest fear was the first time we screened this in front of a room full of other paramedics and firefighters. And I asked them the question. My very first thing before I even introduced myself, like I got up on stage and I was like, did we get it right? And that was like my heart was sinking because I already knew it was entertaining, but I was just like, and I knew that I thought we got it right, but who cares about what the writer thinks, right? It's out in the public. Uh, so for the people that are doing the job, I want to make sure that we got it right and we didn't go crazy, we didn't do anything stupid, and that they felt like it was something that was not a documentary, but realistic to the job that they did. Um, and then I love talking with people like that, people that have, their stories and how do we, um, how did the movie impact them? How did they feel about it? Did it allow them to um, understand, maybe be reflective in their journey and be able to realize that either, they found their passion for the work again, like Randy does in the movie, or, did they realize like maybe it's time to exit, or maybe I do need to get help? Like those are the kind of conversations that I like. Um, One of the things that's also kind of like sidebar funny, kind of, but not really, is when people find out that I write code three, they tend to come up to me and tell me like their worst stories. So it's kind of like I get a lot of that too, of like, oh well, this one time, and it's just like, thanks, man. Like I
Yeah,
get
yeah.
it. Yeah. Um, and then for the people that don't do the job, like, do they understand the significant stressors that go into this type of work, the training that's required? One of the things that didn't make it into the film that I really wanted to, but we didn't for multiple reasons. Number one, because it's pretty boring. Um, the amount of training required to get into to do the job and to be proficient at it. Like I said, we trained Amy, Rain, and Rel for. I had them for like 2.5 days, and even in those 2.5 days, we were hustling. We were like, you got to learn CPR. We got to learn how to do BVM. Here's how to intubate. Here's how to immobilize. Here's how to operate the stretcher, which was like, 3 hours of them playing with it, so it didn't look like a foreign piece of equipment to them.
Yeah.
Um, but it was all of that stuff. Which again, no one's going to sit through a movie of watching somebody become a paramedic, right? That's the most boring thing on the planet. Uh, but for people who don't do the job, do they understand and appreciate the complexity of the work. And so what we did is we tried to pepper that in, not silently, but a little bit more subtly. So you see Rain call out rhythms on the monitor. Well, the general public would probably be like, those look like squiggles. This guy knows what the squiggles mean. So that's a good thing. Being able to do the whole the stick in the eye, that guy, when he's talking about all of the pathophysiology related to that, very briefly. Again, we don't hammer it because we're not making a documentary. Um, but just that they understand like all of that stuff. Because one of my biggest frustrations when I was working, especially when I was a college student, was like, oh, you're a paramedic, cool, you drive the ambulance. And I just wanted to strangle everybody. Like, no, I dedicated at least 2.5 years of just education just to this one thing. Like, you're doing 4 years of partying, and that's great. I did 2 years of this just so I could do this. And then I'm also doing, all these other things. Um, so I think for me, it's kind of like that, you know, the the appreciation factor mixed in with the pay, mixed in with um, the impact that this profession has, and the fact that we are the safety net to society, right? Like we are here, regardless of why you called us. I don't care. You asked for help. I'm here to help. And I think that is one of those things where I think is reassuring, but I also want them. I want the general public who has never stepped foot inside of an ambulance, and I hope they don't ever have to understand what this world is. And then if they watch this film and they're like, "Wow, that seems really interesting," and it motivates them to pursue that career, that's even better. One of the things I've said before too is part of this film was made as a recruitment tool because we were so specific on not being cartoony. You're not putting a cape on. Not everybody lives. You'll get an honest snapshot about what this job is. And if you're still motivated to be like, that's something that still interests me, cool, you're in it for the right reasons. Versus if you get into EMS because you think that you're going to save the world and put a cape on and everybody's going to live and everything's great, like hopefully you self-select out because that's not what this job is. Um, and so those are kind of my primary motive. If I could talk to everybody, like that's what I'd want to know.
Yeah, romanticizing the first responder world is always been our Achilles heel, right? It's been our, it
After
attracts
9/11, it
people.
got really bad. I mean,
Oh
for
yeah,
for good reason. Like
yeah.
I was a fireman when 9/11 happened. I was going through paramedic school. Like I couldn't, if I was wearing a fire department t-shirt, I couldn't buy a beer for like a year, which great. But I think other parts of that is you get put on a pedestal so high that sometimes you can't see yourself anymore.
And when you're on that high on the pedestal, and when you do fall, it's gonna hurt that much more, for sure.
Hmm.
So this might be a interesting question. The ambulance, the bus, I call it, the ambulance, if it could talk, which is, we're thinking out there, what would it say about the first responders that operate that ambulance? What would be some of the characteristics,
Stop
some of the
driving like a
things?
dumbass, I think is what it would say.
That's the number one.
um,
Yeah, I can see
no,
that.
what
I
I
can
think
see
what
that.
I think the cab would say is like, I heard what you said and I'm reporting it to HR, which I think would make every medic
Nice,
cry very quickly.
nice.
Um, no, I think the ambulance would say things like, um, I don't know. To me, I always view like the truck as like the workhorse, right? Like it's there to do a job to get you to point A to point B. I also feel like it's one of those things where it does live. Like the beauty of the film is our sound group or our sound team was it's a company called 424 Post, and they put microphones everywhere. Like they taped one to the exhaust, one to the engine compartment, one to the cab, one to so all the creaks and the jingles and the jar, all of that stuff is 100% real. Like they mic'd up the truck as if it was its own character. And I think some of the groans and the creaks are uh, they're so immersive. Like I would never expect anyone to pick out that, you know, even the sirens. The sirens were not put in post. Those are the sirens that were on that truck. Um, and the reason I know that is because we did that one day when nobody was shooting, and I was the one driving the truck and flipping the siren and doing all the things. Um, and that team took that specific job very, very seriously. So I think the truck actually speaks in the movie because all of those sounds, none of those are like Google siren sounds. Those were trucks. Those were all sounds that truck made um, during its day to day. And I think to your question about like what would the truck say, I think the truck would say, "You got this. Like I'm here. I'm a reliable guy here, and I'll take care of you." And I think that's what you're ultimately looking for in a partner like that. I don't know how else to anthropomorphize the truck other than I'm sure it would be sarcastic, and I think it would also say like, "Yeah, say that, try that again, and I'll tell HR," kind of thing. Like I think he's
I
going to
love
be
it.
a sarcastic kind of.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think there's definitely pebbled in, I don't know the correct term, but dark humor, right? Of, you know, you know, making it funny, but also talking about dark trauma, difficult conversation stuff, right? But in a light way. And I think, yeah, you've brought up HR a few times, so I think your background in HR that definitely resonates. Yeah.
Well, I think part of that too is like, and I've said this multiple times. I think that the gallows humor, the dark humor that we have in public safety, um, is not only necessary, but it's also appropriate in small doses. I want to be 100% clear when I say this. Like, we see and have experienced horrific things on the job. And I think it's okay as a relief valve in certain circumstances to talk about it, and sometimes in crude fashion. Giant asterisks, huge comma. I want to be like all the warning signs here. When it becomes your only personality trait, you need to go seek professional help. I think there's something different from coming off a bad call and being like, "Oh my God, I saw the thing that made me laugh." And I think, something horrific, but you could still chuckle, like relief valve. That's okay. But if that's all you're talking about, or it descends into dehumanizing language, dehumanizing situations, and blaming patients for the situations that they find themselves in, it's time for you to go get help or leave the job.
That's a smart comment. So, Patrick, what would be a question that I have not asked you that you wish I asked you?
Oh, gee, I don't know. What was my favorite part of working with on this project? And I think the answer for that is I was incredibly fortunate and lucky to be able to work with my brother. Uh, I only have one brother, and the fact that he was a full producer on the film that truly made the film happen. Like without him, there's no reality where this film got made without him, because he's the one who told me to write the first version of the script. He was, instrumental in getting it across the finish line, and then to be able to work on such an artistic and honest, vulnerable project with the guy that I've known for 40 plus years, um, was was incredible. It was something that you know, not only am I hanging out with my brother, but I'm getting paid to hang out with my brother every single day, which is just awesome. And we're doing something super cool, and that very few people will ever get the opportunity to do, and that it's good. Um, and then, making friends with everybody else. Like, again, Chris and I have been friends for 10 or 12 years at this point now. I would never trade that for the world. And making friends with the amazing artists and the people that you will never ever see that are behind the scenes, the cast, the crew, or I'm sorry, the crew. The cast were great. I'm not taking anything away from them. They're famous. They're wonderful people. You couldn't have asked for better partners. Like, again, Amy, Rain, Rel, Rob, all of those guys, super professional. They're just as delightful as you think they are off camera. Like they're great. The crew, the people that make the stuff actually happen, were awesome. And it's one of those things where it's like I wish more people could see that aspect, because these guys are coming in to do a job, and uh, they are professionals and experts in what it is that they do. I mean, to give you an idea, the gaffer is a guy who controls lighting. I don't know why they're called gaffers. Look it up in Hollywood. I don't know, but they're the ones that control lighting. So they work with the director of photography, and they'll say things that I've never heard of before. Like, we need a 3K sodium, right? I don't know what that means. I just know it's some sort of special light that does something for the camera. But like, they have their own language, and they are just knocking it out. And because they're so good at it, the time it takes to set up a shot is minuscule compared to like somebody who's like me. It'd be like, I don't know, turn it up 3% brighter. Like they're going, and they got it. Um, which I think again is one of those things where it's like this is a highly niche specialized field, not foreign from EMS. Like we have our canter and we know what we're doing, they know what they're doing, and the men and women who make the movie happen are we're a new realm of friends that I never thought I would have, and it's just been incredible.
That's awesome. Just out of curiosity, how many people would be involved in making this movie a reality? Like
At
hundreds?
least 100,
At least 100?
not hundreds plural, but
Yeah.
if I had to guess, more than 100, but less than 200. So
Wow.
I don't think we hit 150, but somewhere in that
Hmm.
100 plus range. Because I mean, I'm including production assistants, the PAs, pre-production, all the way to post. Definitely more than 100 on set every day. I would say probably anywhere from 60 to 80 on a day, and then you sprinkle in depending on when people come in and out.
This actually filmed in LA streets.
It was. So the
Yeah.
script was written for Anytown, USA. It was never intended to be, LA centric. But as we started shooting and as we started working on it, it became an LA movie. And shooting LA for LA is very rare because it's really expensive. And we were very fortunate that the studio that was funding this project was like, "Yep, we want it to be LA." And so we are like, "All right." So yeah, I'm not going to say no to that. So we shot almost exclusively in the Hawthorne Inglewood area, so around South Central ish, and around Los Angeles Airport, the LAX airport.
Oh, wow. Cool. Another question that kind of popped up was, have you ever talked to your professor? I'm assuming you have, who
I
kind of
tried.
initiated this whole essay thing.
I wish I have tried to find him. I don't know if he's passed away. I don't. He certainly is retired. Um, I have tried to because I remember his name and I keep trying to reach
Funny.
out to him. I'm trying to find him, but no, I've not. I would love nothing more than to be able to be like, it's your fault.
No
Uh,
kidding. No kidding. That'd be great.
uh, but no, I've not been successful in finding him yet. So again,
Do
I
you want to
don't
share his
know.
name on here or not?
His name is Ben Greer. He wrote a book, Murder on the Holy See, which is one of the reasons he was teaching that creative writing class. Um, but yeah, I've tried to find him. I reached out to uh, the publisher of that book. I know he's written more than one book, but I just remember that title in particular. And yeah, unsuccessful. I've not been able to find. He doesn't teach at the university anymore, fortunately.
Oh, anyone listening? Anyone know that name? Let's
Yeah, if
reach
you know
out.
Ben Greer,
Uh,
tell him to call me.
That's awesome. So, how can people watch this incredible movie?
So we're on Apple and Amazon to rent or purchase. In Canada, um, Vortex Media owns the rights, and so, but I don't know. I know you guys don't have Hulu. In the United States, we're on Hulu. We're streaming on Hulu, um, and I don't know what streaming services Vortex Media has, but I know that Vortex bought the rights in Canada. But probably the easiest, best way would be either on Apple or Amazon. I also know that it's on Blu-ray and DVD on. You can buy Blu-rays and DVDs on Amazon.
I like those, do they?
Yeah, they do. The funniest part is the very first DVD we bought we was in Germany. So we have the German version. So one of the funnier things that we didn't know was that they sold the German rights first. And so Chris texted me because the very first reviews start coming in before we had launched in the United States.
No.
The first reviews are coming in and they're all in German. And we're going, is somebody making fun of us? Like, who has seen this? And you throw it into Google Translate, and it's like, oh, it's a good movie, blah blah blah. And we're like, how do people in Germany see this? And then we come to find out that they sold the rights in Germany first.
That's funny.
So we can say that we're big in Germany, and they were the the first the first DVD I have is all dubbed in German, which is just hilarious.
Classic. Well, in Canada, I watched it on Apple TV, and I'm pretty sure I just saw that it's coming to Netflix in Canada. Does that
Oh,
sound
really?
right?
Okay.
Yeah,
I,
I'm
I
pretty sure I just saw
maybe
that. Yep.
if that's true, I didn't know about that, but
I think it
that's
was
great to
March
hear.
too, March 2026. So I think it's this month. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So to kind of wrap up, what would be kind of your lasting message you want to part with our listener today with? What would be something that you would just want to share with the world, something that you don't have an opportunity to necessarily say all the time and you want to share with the world?
Thank you. I've done this on every interview I've ever done ever, and that is uh, for anybody who's doing the job right now, who's still working. Uh, I know you'll never hear it enough, so you'll hear it from me today. Thank you for what you do, because I think it matters. I know it matters, and I know it makes a difference in the communities that you're serving. And I don't really care where that is or what it is that you do. Um, and so, from a guy who did the job for 12 years, thank you for what you do, because it absolutely matters. And I hope that you feel as valued as you are.
Message. And I guess likewise back to you is like, thanks for putting this out into the world. Honestly, this is, you've done your duty giving back to the community and as a first responder, but now you're doing it in a whole different capacity, right? So thank you for putting this out. Your brother, all the 150 cast, or not cast, but people involved in it. Thank you for putting it out in the world, because it truly was a great movie. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah. All right, everyone. Hopefully you enjoy this great episode. Be sure to check out Code 3, the movie. It's definitely one of the best ones I've seen in a long time. Be sure to check that out. Lots of ways to view it. And if you know his professor from, 15 years ago, make sure you reach out to Patrick or myself, and we'll make sure they're connected. All right, everyone. Until next time, stay well. All right,
Have a good
that's
one.
a wrap.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Beneath the Helmet. We hope that this podcast has provided you with valuable insights into the world of firefighters' health and wellness. Remember, caring for your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is crucial to achieving optimal performance. Join us next time on Beneath the Helmet for more inspiring conversations. Until then, stay well.